ever been out with a group of friends and you want to get into a bar or a restaurant or a club and there's a long line to get in, and some of you guys are cool with waiting, and then there's one friend who's like, I'm not waiting online. I never wait on lines. And this friend might even be you. So, and that's okay. No judgments here. But we all have that one friend, right? Who doesn't believe in waiting in lines. We also have, maybe there's someone else we know, or we have another friend that insists that they deserve or want to be with the most beautiful person. They want to date the most beautiful person, and they're not going to settle. So we have all experienced people like this, people who in general have a sense of what we may call entitlement. And we kind of look at them with a side eye like, okay. But you know what? There's something to be learned there. And the thing to be learned from them is not necessarily how to be an a-hole, but it's how to put yourself first. And putting yourself first is practicing self-care. And most of the time when people think of self-care, they think of, treating themselves to a spa date or treating themselves to a nice item that they've been wanting to buy. And great, that's true. Like, that's all part of self-care. The true self-care means really putting yourself first and finding value in yourself. Finding that you are worthy to take up space, to have a point of view, to do what you want, to live your life the way that you want to live it, to achieve your dreams because you're capable. And that is the difference between someone who's quote unquote entitled and someone who maybe doesn't put themselves first. It's that feeling that somehow others are more important, or other things outside of ourselves are more important than ourselves. And again, this is not to say that we should walk around carrying like a grandiose sense of self-importance, but I do think it's important that we really it sinks in our minds that no one is really responsible for putting ourselves first but ourselves. That you literally have to become your own champion. Of course, we have mentors and we have relatives and parents that do care about us to a great extent. However, your sole responsibility is to look out for yourself, because no one is going to do that for you. And so we may look at these people again as entitled, but they're just doing just that. They're watching out for themselves. So I know that this concept is easier said than done. I know that, logically we may think, yeah, of course I'm valuable. Of course I'm great. Of course I'm no different, no better, no worse than that entitled person or, anyone else. But to actually practice it is a different story. And I won't really get into why that is the case. I think it really comes from childhood. Basically, many of us are just born to people please. And, we grow up in an environment where we have to essentially, cater to others' needs. So that just conditions us to put ourselves on the back burner. And that's understandable, but in order for you to really succeed in your dreams and your goals, you have to be able to learn to say no to others so that you can say yes to yourself. And one way that you can know whether or not you're putting yourself first or not is you notice that you shrink in front of others. So maybe you don't say certain things because you feel that by saying or doing things that you might offend someone, or you might not get the approval of someone that you're maybe romantically interested in, or there might be a negative repercussion for your actions, maybe at work or something, if you stood up for yourself or asked for maybe a higher salary or whatever it is, or maybe you confronted a friend about maybe their behavior or something. So you kind of refrain yourself, or maybe you know that a friend of yours is maybe jealous or sensitive, so you kind of try to dim your own light so that others can accept you, or so that you won't rock the boat, whether it's with family or whoever, as I've mentioned. So that's just like a little sign that that you might be people pleasing and not putting yourself first. Now how do we actually change that? So I'm going to give you 4 tips that I've actually been practicing recently, and it's been a major game changer for me. I think it's something like I always thought I was like trying to practice self-care, and I heard the words put yourself first. Okay, yeah, like I don't know what that means. Like maybe I put myself first in one instance, and then I just kind of like go back to my normal programming. But putting yourself first can definitely is a process. So the first tip that I have is to trust your intuition. So I know that sounds kind of like new agey, and you may be like, okay, sure, I don't even know if my intuition is talking to me or not. But it's very easy. Like your intuition is your gut, and your gut, when you get a funny feeling about something, you may feel a little bit off about something. That's your gut telling you that something is not right. And many times we may overlook that feeling because we think logically that the person hasn't said anything outrightly for us to maybe denote some kind of negative intention, or something that doesn't make us feel easy, or there's just no physical, visible, tangible evidence, so we think it must be all in our head. But the thing is, communication, I mean, this has been proven, communication is only 7% of words spoken. So the other, I think, like 57% is body language, and the other remaining percentage, someone do the math, about 30-something% is it's actually tone of voice. So really, what we hear is only a very small fraction of what is actually being communicated, and we have to embrace the fact and accept the fact that we are animals, and that we have a lot of just sensory perceptions and abilities that go beyond just like what you can see with a naked eye. And I don't think it's necessarily something like spiritual if you want to, but it's really just like the same way that some animals can have like extremely sharp like night vision, or they can smell certain things that we can't smell. It's the same way that we need to embrace our intuition. I mean, looking back, my intuition has never, ever been wrong. And I'm sure that if you look back at your own experience, you'll find that your intuition has never, ever been wrong. I mean, your intuition can never be wrong, the same way that humans can't breathe underwater. Like, it's just not possible. So definitely trusting your intuition, and you don't necessarily have to have the facts. Like sometimes we can't even put a finger on it, but something just doesn't feel right. If you get that feeling even slightly, trust it and actually try to listen to it. Like if your gut is saying, you know what, I kind of just don't feel like going on this date. Or, I just don't know if I really trust this person. Whatever it is, or I just don't feel like this is the right opportunity for me. I can't put my finger on it. Obviously, you have to be able to discern between fear and intuition. But really, if there is no fear involved, but you still have that doubt, then it's likely your intuition speaking to you. So that's my first tip. My second tip is to learn to say no to small things. So when you've been conditioned to be like a people pleaser and put other people first, it's very hard to say no. Growing up, I remember I used to love to be involved in many things, and at the same time, I didn't even know it, but I was also a people pleaser. So when people would invite me out or to do things, I would always say, yeah, sure, or yes, I'll do it. And then day of, I would realize, actually, like, I don't want to do this, or yeah, I just don't feel like doing this. And then I would look flaky, right? So it's because I wasn't honoring that perhaps I didn't want to do it in the first place. And if you're not sure about something, if you're not sure whether or not you want to commit to something, you don't have to commit right then and there. You can take the space, give yourself space to respond, and you can just learn to say no to small things that maybe are less intimidating to do. So whether it's like, you know, your friends want to go out, but you're like tired and you want to sleep in, you know, you can just say, you know, guys, I'd love to, but I want to rest, or I want to sleep in today. So that is one thing. Start with like small things. And then leading to my next point, so about taking space to respond. And that's exactly it. I mean, I already said it, but respond, don't react. So many times when we want to say no, you know, it might be because like, you know, we don't get a good feeling, and so, or, you know, we want to say no, but we don't know how to say it in a way that, you know, will be well received. So we might try and fumble to say no in a way that comes across maybe like overly emotional, or, you know, maybe it's not as articulate as we would like to be, or anything like that. And so I would suggest that if you are feeling a little bit concerned about saying no to something or someone, that you take a step back. You don't necessarily have to respond to anyone or anything on their timetable, or, you know, right away or urgently, which is also something, you know, that if you are someone who likes to put others first, you kind of feel that sense of urgency. So take that time to make sure that you're responding and not reacting. Like if you feel a wave of strong emotions, maybe it's best that you take a moment before you respond, or that you say anything. And again, sorry, I wanted to just bring up this point that, you know, when you choose to respond, and if you choose to say no, you know, you can give an explanation, but you also don't have to go into a lot of details if you don't want to. You know, just as simple as a thank you so much for, you know, your invitation, or thank you so much for this, but I can't make it, or, you know, I'm unable to make it, but thank you so much. So also showing a little bit of gratitude. Yes, because a lot of times we think that the word no is very negative because we're not giving the other person what they want, but we can take the sting out of a no by still being very polite about things. So just because you're saying no doesn't mean that you can't be respectful, polite, even if it's something like negotiating back and forth with a salary or a job contract. I remember recently I was negotiating a job contract, and I was actually really proud of myself because I really didn't want to continue with the contract unless certain demands were going to be met, because I felt that the working conditions weren't sufficient for me to want to continue with the work. And so instead of me responding right away, and I knew I didn't want to do the work anymore, so the only way that I would do the work was if there were certain conditions that were met. And I took a step back, took a couple days to think about it. And when I came back, I, you know, respectfully thanked them for the opportunity, but I also clearly laid out what were some conditions that I wanted to be considered before I said yes, if I were to say yes. And, you know, they actually didn't really, they took up only one of the two conditions that I suggested, but I really wanted both conditions to be met before I continued. And because they didn't, I respectfully declined. And even though I said no to them, it ended very amicably. And so it was kind of like a win-win situation, because I knew that I didn't have to continue with them. At the same time, we kind of made an agreement to just so that I could just finish my contract, my original contract, and whatever work I would finish by then, I would be done with the contract instead of continuing to do more work under conditions that weren't suitable for me. So I know this is very abstract, but the point is that it's okay to say no. It's okay to assert your needs, and it's okay for, you know, even if others say no right back, like at least you have the right to assert your needs. And if something doesn't feel kind of right, sit right within you, then that means it's probably something that you need to speak up about and you need to address and not just accept. So the last tip I want to give you guys is to practice the law of detachment. So it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the job contract. Every time you say no, you're saying no to what someone else or something else is trying to impose upon you. So it's almost like a negotiation. So when you say no, you have to prepare for whatever consequences come your way. So that means that in your mind, you have to be prepared for the best and the worst case scenario. In the case of the job contract, for instance, I knew that if my conditions were met, right? I said no to how the terms were presented to me at first. But if the conditions were met, then I would be stuck with that contract, and I'd have to extend it and do all the work that I didn't want to do. But in my mind, I accepted that. If they didn't accept it, and they wanted to terminate the contract, then I would lose some money that maybe it was promised to me for this contract. But in my mind, I was okay with that, because the alternative, which was not having to continue to work under these conditions, was a better trade-off for me. So this can apply for you as well. So whether it's maybe someone you're dating and you're afraid of maybe telling them no, that you don't want something, let's say casual, or no, you don't want a relationship, whatever side of the fence you're on, like that may bring about some unfavorable consequences. But you have to be detached from everything. And how do you detach? It's easier said than done, right? Oh, just detach from the outcome, right? That's totally fine. But to me, it's actually become a lot easier lately to detach. I don't know what it is, if I just don't care, but actually that is exactly what it is. And that's great. And the reason why you shouldn't care is because if something or someone is making you do something or feel a certain way that doesn't make you feel comfortable, or is not aligned with who you are or your purpose or anything like that, then is it really serving you? It's probably not, right? Like, it's actually not conducive to your growth and where you're trying to be. So even though, yes, that person looks great and everything, or yes, maybe you're lonely or whatever the case is, but by you keeping that person around is actually going to do more harm than good. By you sticking in that job that you hate, under those like circumstances that you don't want, that's actually just going to make you more depressed and more unmotivated, and it's just going to have a trickle effect, by you not maybe setting boundaries and saying no to your family or friends that, maybe take up or overburden themselves on you, then that is also hindering your peace of mind, right? So you have to remember that what you're saying no to, you're saying no to for a good reason. And it's not because you're saying no to everything. You're saying no to things that don't resonate with you. And it's like they say, that quote that says, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter, don't mind. So yes, guys, that is all that I have for you today. I hope that you liked these tips, and please let me know if you found any of these 4 tips helpful. I'd love to hear it in the comment section below. And once again, I would really appreciate if you guys can hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. That really helps me to try to grow my channel. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.